The desert sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the arid landscape bordering the shores of the Dead Sea. The air was thick with the scent of sage and salt, a reminder of the ancient waters that stood witness to centuries of human aspiration and despair. In this rugged terrain, nestled among the cliffs, lay a community unlike any other, one that would come to shape the very foundation of spiritual thought in the years to come. The Essenes. The Essenes were a sect of Jewish mystics and ascetics who had chosen to separate themselves from the tumult of the world. Living in communal settings, they dedicated their lives to prayer, study, and a rigorous code of conduct that governed every aspect of their existence. They wore simple garments, often white, symbolic of their purity and commitment to a life of inner reflection and moral rectitude. Each day began with rituals of purification, as they sought to cleanse not only their bodies but also their spirits, preparing themselves for the divine wisdom that they believed was key to true enlightenment. Their teachings emphasized the importance of community, and their strict adherence to the laws of the Torah was both a guiding light and a foundation for their daily practices. The Essenes believed in an imminent apocalypse, a divine judgment that would cleanse the world of its impurities. This belief only fueled their desire for purity, as they sought to prepare themselves for the coming of a new age filled with light and truth. They emphasized the importance of sharing goods and living in harmony, a counterpoint to the corruption they saw in the Jerusalem elites and the prevailing sects of their time. Among these ascetics was a young man named Jesus, whose restless spirit often drew him to the austere environment of the Essene community. While he was raised in Nazareth, surrounded by the familiar comforts of family and tradition, his heart often sought deeper answers, echoing the Essenes' quest for meaning beyond the mere observance of rituals. He would sit for hours in the company of the elders, listening to the sacred texts being read aloud, absorbing their teachings about the kingdom of God, love, and the importance of repentance and humility. One of the elder Essenes, a sage named Teacher of Righteousness, became particularly fond of this spirited young man. He saw in Jesus a rare blend of charisma and sincerity, qualities that would eventually captivate and lead many. The teacher often invited Jesus to join in discussions about the prophecies that spoke of a coming Messiah, a liberator destined to fulfill the hopes of the oppressed and the weary. "Child," the teacher would say, stroke his white beard in contemplation, "the path of righteousness is steep and narrow. The world is fraught with pitfalls, and only the pure in heart will see the truth that lies ahead. Know that the essence of our teachings is not merely in the execution of laws, but in the nature of love and compassion for one another." With each passing day, Jesus internalized the meanings woven into the parables and the lessons drawn from the scrolls. From the stories of ancient prophets who challenged the status quo, he drew inspiration. The way they confronted power with humility resonated deep within him. He would often ponder the lives of those cast aside by society: the lepers, the tax collectors, the women at the margins. The Essenes taught that every soul was precious in the eyes of God and deserved compassion. As he became more immersed in the Essene way of life, an awakening of sorts would stir within him, a realization that he was destined for something greater. He believed a profound truth was calling, one that transcended the letters of the law and reached into the depths of human experience. This belief was not lost on the elders, who saw in him the spark of potential and divinity. In the quieter moments, away from the communal rituals, Jesus would retreat to the barren hills that overlooked the settlement, where he could feel the embrace of solitude and the presence of the Almighty in every whisper of the wind. There, he began to pray with fervor, seeking clarity about his identity and purpose. He wrestled with his understanding of the divine and the justice he longed to see in the world. Long nights spent in meditation deepened his understanding, honing his thoughts into something that could be shared with the world beyond the walls of Qumran. As the seasons changed, so too did the atmosphere of anticipation surrounding Jesus. Word of his growing insights traveled beyond the borders of the Essene community, piquing the interest and suspicion of both the temple authorities and others seeking the truth. Conversations began to swirl about the young prophet who spoke of the impending kingdom, and contrasting philosophies emerged among the sects of Jerusalem. As the community practiced their ascetic lifestyles, a paradox was forming. While the Essenes sought separation from the corrupt world, Jesus felt the magnetic pull to engage with it. His interactions began to expand beyond the hills and caves, as he ventured into towns and villages, gathering followers who hungered for a message of love, healing, and hope. The Essenes, who had adhered to a strict separation for generations, watched with a mixture of pride and concern. They understood the depth of Jesus' insights, but feared for his safety amid a world fraught with political and religious tensions. Would he be able to maneuver through the complexities of power, or would he fall prey to the same forces that dictated their exile from society? Despite their apprehensions, an understanding existed within the community. The teacher of righteousness spoke to the others. Perhaps the time has come for our teachings to leap from this mountaintop and spread beyond our borders, to illuminate hearts not yet reached by our message. Jesus is a vessel, one we have tried to nurture. Let us prepare him without hindering his path. And so they did. Under the cloak of night, while the world around them slept, the Essenes gathered with Jesus, sharing the fruits of their labor. The scrolls of wisdom, the scriptures of prophecy, and sacred moments of enlightenment. Each exchange strengthened him, sharpening his voice like a sword of truth, ready to cut through the fog of ignorance thickening across the land. The winds of change whispered of the unfolding drama ahead, a story that would merge the life of an ascetic with that of a revolutionary, a humble healer with a prophetic voice. The influences of the Essenes, now deeply entwined with his being, would become a foundation for the movement he was destined to lead, one that would challenge conventions and embrace the marginalized. In the distance, beyond the rocky terrain of Qumran, the sound of footsteps echoed in the valleys below, heralding the arrival of those yearning for hope. Unbeknownst to them, within the cloistered walls of the Essene community, the man they sought was preparing to step into a role that would forever alter the spiritual landscape of the world. As dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the path ahead, Jesus felt a surge of conviction. The teachings of the Essenes had ignited a flame within him, one that would soon burn brightly for all to see. As Jesus settled into the rhythm of life among the Essenes, a palpable sense of calm enveloped him. The days flowed with a simplicity that resonated deep within his spirit, a stark contrast to the tumult of his earlier years in Nazareth. Surrounded by the vibrant mountains of Judea, the community embraced a life dedicated to humility and spiritual enlightenment. Here, he found kindred souls who sought not merely to exist, but to transcend the mundane. One early morning, as the sun began to cast golden rays over the rocky landscape, Jesus was drawn to the shores of the Dead Sea. There, by the water's edge, a group of men gathered, each clad in simple robes, their faces serene with the early glow of meditation. They welcomed him with nods and gestures, acknowledging his presence with a shared understanding that words were often unnecessary. "Join us," one of the elders said softly, motioning for Jesus to sit among them. His name was Jehoiakim, and he was revered for his wisdom and gentle guidance. The other men circled around, sitting cross-legged, their eyes closed. They breathed deeply, synchronizing their inhales and exhales like a whispering breeze. Jesus hesitated for a moment, unsure of the practice. But as he observed the tranquility of his companions, he followed suit, closing his eyes and letting the warmth of the sun envelop him. They began to breathe together, and soon the rushing thoughts in his mind began to fade. It brought a profound stillness, one he had long been searching for. In that moment, he sensed the intertwined energy of life, of creation, and a communion far greater than himself. This silent gathering gave way to teachings on prayer, a cornerstone of the Essene way of life. Under the guidance of Jehoiakim, Jesus learned that prayer was not merely a recitation of words, but a heartfelt connection to the divine, an act of listening as much as it was of speaking. True prayer, Jehoiakim explained, is like a river that flows in both directions. It calls forth our intentions while intertwining with the greater will of the universe. They taught him to find a quiet place within, to seek a direct dialogue with the divine, and to express gratitude for every breath, every moment. They would rise at dawn, facing the rising sun, speaking their prayers aloud. The essence of their words hung in the air, mingling with the first rays of light, creating a sacred atmosphere. Jesus was captivated, feeling a deeper connection to the great mysteries of existence. As if he were being woven into a larger tapestry, the days turned into weeks. These practices of meditation and prayer deepened his understanding of his own spirit. The simple acts he once observed growing up were transformed into a profound practice of presence and peace. He began to see the divine not only in the scriptures, but in the very fabric of life. each person, each creature, a reflection of the sacred. The community living of the Essenes was another lesson in compassion and simplicity. They shared everything: their food, their thoughts, and their labor. No man was an island. Each life was intertwined, bound by mutual respect and deep camaraderie. As they worked in the gardens, tending to the crops, they sang songs and shared stories, laughter bubbling like the fresh spring water that flowed nearby. Jesus often worked beside a young man named Edgar, who spoke passionately about their mission. "We are called to bring forth the light," he would say, his hands gesturing toward the sky. "To stand firm against the darkness that surrounds us. Our community must be a beacon of hope for others." These ideals resonated profoundly within Jesus. He felt a burgeoning purpose within himself, the inklings of a mission that steadied with each shared meal and every whisper of prayer. He started to see that their practices were not merely rituals, but pathways to awakening, to understanding the ailing world outside their secluded existence and the further-reaching ramifications of their collective light. The teachings of the Essenes also embraced the importance of purification, cleansing the body and spirit to allow the divine to inhabit them fully. They initiated Jesus into various ceremonies of water, embracing not only the physical act of cleansing, but also the spiritual renewal it represented. They would immerse themselves in the cool waters of the Dead Sea, washing away not just sweat and grime, but burdens, regrets, and doubts. Emerging from the waters, each man would stand renewed, the sunlight glinting off their skin as if marking them with divine purpose. Among the practices Jesus particularly cherished was a nightly gathering where they would share their reflections and insights. This was a sacred circle, initiated by the head elder, where vulnerability was encouraged and wisdom was shared. Here, they spoke of their dreams, their fears, and their hopes. Jesus listened intently as men of different walks of life expressed the common struggles they faced in their quest for spiritual understanding. "It is in our weakness that we find our strength," Jehoiakim would often remind them. "Embrace it, for it is through the shadows that light shines the brightest." The words reverberated within Jesus, shaping his understanding of humanity. The complexities of suffering and joy, the necessity of community, and the unwavering light that existed within everyone, waiting to be nurtured. He began to see, clearer than ever, that his mission would require a profound compassion for those who suffered, a calling to illuminate the path for others caught in shadows. As he immersed himself deeper into the teachings of the Essenes, the early seeds of his mission were being sown in the fertile soil of his heart and mind. Jesus felt like he was standing at the threshold of something great, an awakening that would carry him beyond the mountains and into the lives of countless souls awaiting the light. Evenings spent in prayer would culminate in dreams filled with visions of healing, of communion, and of journeys yet to come. He may have come to the Essenes to learn, to find refuge, but what he found instead was a mirror reflecting his innermost calling, one that echoed with the silent power of love and light. And as he looked out across the horizon of the hills, the sun setting aflame with colors of hope, he understood that he was but a vessel, an instrument for divine purpose in an ever-unfolding tapestry of faith. As Jesus wandered through the dusty paths leading to the secluded enclave of the Essenes, a growing sense of purpose filled the air around him. The teachings of this ancient sect, steeped in profound wisdom and a search for deeper truths, resonated with his young heart and mind. The Essenes, with their dedication to ascetic living and their stringent moral code, reflected a form of spirituality that seemed to align with the divine calling that had begun to stir within him. Upon entering the community, Jesus was welcomed by the wise and austere leader, Elder Simeon. With a long, white beard that seemed to flow like the waters of the Jordan, his presence exuded both authority and kindness. He gathered the young seekers around a flickering fire one evening, a group mostly consisting of men and boys seeking enlightenment, just as Jesus had. Underneath the vast, starlit sky, the elders spoke of the importance of purity of heart and the idea of the kingdom of God being accessible to every soul that sought it with sincerity. "To be pure of heart, my brothers," Elder Simeon said, his voice calm and steady, "is not merely to abstain from sin, but to actively engage in the transformation of our world through compassion and love. The divine dwells among us, but we must learn to see it in all our interactions. To love God is to love one's neighbor, to care for the poor, the orphan, and the widow." From that moment, a seed was planted within Jesus' soul. He understood that compassion was not just an abstract virtue. It was the very essence of existence. Thereafter, he devoted himself to the study of scripture alongside the Essene texts. He spent hours with scrolls and parchments, delving into the writings of the prophets, emerging with a deeper understanding of the laws governing morality and the divine intent infused within them. One particular evening, as twilight deepened, he sat with Miriam, a spirited Essene woman known for her wisdom and keen insight. She challenged him with questions that peeled back layers of preconceived beliefs. "What is the greatest commandment?" she asked, gazing directly into his eyes, searching for a reflection of truth. "The commandments are numerous," he mused, "yet they all point towards love. Love for God and love for one another. If our actions are rooted in love, we fulfill the law." Miriam smiled, a glint of understanding evident in her eyes. "Then, my dear Jesus, how do we embody love in a world so harsh and unforgiving? How do we cultivate mercy when we are constantly surrounded by injustice?" Her questions stirred something deep within him. He was reminded of the stories he had heard from his mother about the trials faced by their people, of the oppression that hung over them like a dark cloud. "We must be the light," he replied earnestly. "Those who are strong need to uplift the weak. We must act with compassion, not just feel it. As a tree bears fruit, so must we bear the fruits of the Spirit." His reflections on morality were deepened further during lessons with Isaac, an elderly scholar whose eyes sparkled with wisdom. Isaac emphasized the importance of inner contemplation and the practice of silent prayer, encouraging Jesus to seek a personal connection with God beyond the mere rituals established by tradition. "It is in the silence, young man, that the voice of the divine can be heard. You must cultivate stillness within to comprehend the vastness of love that surrounds us." Long hours of discussion with Isaac led Jesus to meditate on the nature of the divine, a loving Father who desires relationship over mere adherence to law. He began to grasp the concept that the heart's intentions were far more significant than the outward legalistic observance championed by some of the Pharisees. He contemplated how many had lost sight of this core teaching, trapped in the rigidity of rules, while the true essence of divine love and compassion lingered in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. These moments of interaction not only shaped his evolving beliefs, but also influenced the way he viewed the relationships within the Essene community. He was struck by how the Essenes lived out their principles in profound ways. The commitment to communal living was a testament to their belief that each person had a role in nurturing the whole. They shared their resources, healed the sick, and provided guidance to one another, embodying the very essence of what it meant to be a servant of God. A defining moment came during a communal gathering where they broke bread together, sharing food and stories. Here, he witnessed the mutual support and the way each voice was valued. This gathering was more than just a meal. It represented unity and shared purpose. This sense of belonging confirmed to Jesus that spiritual fulfillment was found not in isolation, but in collective embrace. The teachings of the Essenes inspired him to further envision a community rooted in love, where grace flowed freely, and healing was a shared journey. As seasons changed, so did the depths of Jesus' understanding. The words of the prophets became a song in his heart, and the lessons learned from the Essenes wove a fabric of thought that transcended the teachings he had known. With Elder Simeon, he often discussed the nature of the Messiah, a figure destined to bring peace and justice, but also to ignite a revolution of love against the backdrop of opposition. Together, in private discussions by the firelight, these two souls dreamed of a coming era where hearts would be transformed and the foundations of oppression would crumble beneath the weight of love. They shared hopes for a world that reflected the righteousness of God, not through force, but through the quiet, persistent insistence of compassion and mercy. I end these formative years with the Essenes. Jesus not only absorbed teachings, but began to embody them. He practiced loving his neighbors, serving the sick, and sharing meals with those considered outsiders. Each action mirrored the principles of compassion he learned within the community. And with each act of kindness, the truth of his calling became clearer. He was becoming a bridge, a point where divine love and human experience could converge. Thus, in the embrace of the Essenes, Jesus blossomed into the teacher he was destined to be, one who would call humanity not just to a new religious observance, but to a radical transformation of the heart, rooted in love, compassion, and moral courage. In their humble commune, amidst scrolls and shared prayers, He was finding not only his voice, but the very essence of the divine message he would one day share with the world. As Jesus immersed himself in the teachings of the Essenes, he found solace in their communal living and the shared devotion to purity, contemplation, and the deeper understanding of God. Yet, within this serene environment, a pivotal moment awaited him, one that would test not only his commitment to their ideals, but also the very essence of his nascent mission. The air was thick with anticipation in the settlement nestled near the shores of the Dead Sea. A gathering was called, where the elders of the Essenes discussed a pressing concern. A rift had grown between their community and a nearby village that had felt threatened by the Essenes' growing influence. Fearing their practices would bring about social upheaval, the villagers accused the Essenes of heresy, claiming they distorted the teachings of the Torah. Jesus sat among the group, listening intently as the elders deliberated. Their discontent was palpable, a mixture of indignation and a sense of betrayal that seeped into every corner of the gathering. Yet, amidst the cacophony of voices rising and falling, the young man felt an unsettling weight upon his heart. He understood the villagers' fears, their ignorance leading them to resent what they did not comprehend. One elder, a wise and stern figure named Abba, proposed they cut ties and withdraw further into the wilderness, away from the antagonism. It is not our place to engage with such bitterness. We must preserve the sanctity of our community and our beliefs, he declared, pointing to the importance of isolation for spiritual growth. But Jesus found himself stirred by a different conviction. Was it not through love and compassion that true understanding could blossom? To isolate themselves would only deepen the chasm between them and the outside world, a world yearning for light, however dimly lit. He had come to know that the essence of God's love was not confined to a select few, but expanded into the hearts of humanity. The challenge was clear. How could he articulate this burgeoning understanding without inciting further division? As the dialogue continued, he felt a growing urgency within himself, as if the very fabric of his future mission was woven into this moment. When the elders turned their eyes toward him, seeking his thoughts as one of their own, Jesus stood taller, his voice firm yet gentle. Abba, we stand here as lights in a dark world. If we retreat now, we abandon those seeking truth, a truth that we have come to embrace. Isn't it our duty to reach out? To illuminate their shadows instead of allowing the darkness to overshadow our own hearts? A tentative silence fell over the group. The younger members exchanged glances tinged with skepticism, but the elders' expressions ranged from surprise to contemplation. Abba, taken aback by the impassioned plea, raised an eyebrow. And how do you propose we engage these people, Jesus? They do not wish for dialogue, they wish for our silence. Encouraged by the challenge to think deeper, Jesus felt a surge of inspiration. What if we invited them here? An open discourse, a chance for us to share our teachings, our understanding of the scriptures, and their significance in our lives? Let them see who we are, not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters in a shared quest for holiness. The proposal hung in the air, thick with uncertainty and hope. A few murmurs of agreement flitted through the crowd, but many elders remained skeptical. It was a grave gamble, they reasoned, a risk too significant in a world that often met confrontation with hostility. Jesus understood their fears, but he also understood the divine imperative growing within him: to love, to heal, and to unite. The days that followed were filled with intensive preparation. Jesus worked alongside the members of the community to build a site where the dialogue could occur. It was a space that would accommodate both Essenes and villagers, adorned with symbols of peace. A tapestry of olive branches, a centerpiece of water drawn from the Jordan, representing life, purification, and the essence of their united spirits. As the fateful day approached, Jesus felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. Would his vision of unity transform hearts? Or would it fall flat in the face of long-held prejudices? He found solace in the ritual of the community's practices. Prayers, fasting, and meditative scripture readings filled his days, grounding him in spiritual strength. When the villagers finally arrived, somber and suspicious, Jesus stood at the forefront, his heart racing. His spirit yearned to embrace them, to bridge the divide. The tension crackled in the air as the two groups sized each other up, strangers bound by misunderstandings and fear. But as the talks began, he offered a foundation of shared beliefs. He spoke of love, justice, and the divine beckoning for unity, weaving stories that connected the traditions of the Essenes with the history and hopes of the villagers. His sincerity shone through his words, illuminating the space between them, giving form to understanding. Through questions and testimonies, fears melted into discussions. Faces once hardened by distrust began to soften as common ground emerged. Each voice contributed, weaving a new narrative, one that sang harmony, not discord. The dialogue proved transformative. Jesus witnessed hesitant smiles, nods of acknowledgement, and even heartfelt confessions of misconceptions. In this sacred gathering, he felt the mission unfurl before his eyes, not just as a vision of peace, but as a movement towards a familial bond. When the day drew to a close, both groups shared a simple meal, an offering of bread and water. The meal symbolized a nourishment not only of the body, but of the spirit. In that act of sharing, walls crumbled and hearts laid bare, striving towards connection. For Jesus, this experience became a keystone in his spiritual evolution, a realization that the essence of his mission rested not solely in the isolation of spiritual purity, but in the embodiment of engagement, compassion, and the radical love that could unite even the most divided of hearts. Over time, the rift healed, and Jesus learned that true discipleship required moving beyond comfort zones and embracing the complexities of human relationships. This challenge, faced head-on, molded him further into the teacher he was destined to become, one who would walk among the people, advocating love, connection, and the transformative power of community. And so, as the sun dipped under the horizon that day, casting a warm glow over the faces of the reconciled communities, Jesus felt a profound shift within himself. His mission crystallized with clarity, a journey of love unfolding before him, one that stretched forth as boundless and deep as the waters of the Jordan. The Essenes had taught him well, but now, armed with a broader understanding, he was ready to embark on his path, lit by the fire of human connection and divine purpose. Jesus sat in silence at the edge of the cave where he had spent so many moons with the Essenes, the cool stone brushing against his back, mingling comfort with the grasping tendrils of change that stirred within him. The teachings of the Essenes had seeped deep into his spirit like rain into parched soil, their rhythms of prayer and contemplation guiding the early mornings and the languid twilight hours he cherished. Yet, even as he drew strength from their communal life, an inexplicable yearning pulsed in his heart, urging him towards a path that diverged from the secluded existence of the sect. The reasons for his departure were multifaceted. Initially, his time with the Essenes had been devoted to learning, absorbing their interpretation of the scriptures, their understanding of purity, and their connection to the divine. They were a people of profound faith, advocating for a life that eschewed worldly distractions in favor of deep spiritual introspection. They immersed him in the nuances of the law, the significance of ritual, and the profound power of prayer. Yet, as he listened to their discussions about the imminent arrival of the kingdom of God, he felt a stirring deep within, a growing awareness that the path to that kingdom might not unfold entirely within the confines of their austere order. In the stillness of the night, surrounded by starlit skies and the muted rustling of desert life, he wrestled with an unshakable thought, that faith must not only be a matter of inward contemplation, but also one of action and engagement with the world at large. As he watched the moonlight dance upon the rocks, illuminating their surfaces like the flickering hope he felt inside, Jesus understood that remaining with the Essenes would ultimately limit his mission. They were a people who shunned the chaos of society, seeking refuge in purity, but he sensed a calling to bring that very purity into the chaos, to manifest grace in the marketplace, to proclaim joy amidst despair, and to deliver light in darkness. In preparation for this new journey, Jesus immersed himself in the lessons he had learned, carefully noting the intricate tapestry of spiritual wisdom woven by his teachers. He cataloged their insights on love, compassion, and forgiveness, knowing these would be the bedrock of his own ministry. The communal meals, where shared bread and wine sealed bonds between men, had taught him the profound strength of table fellowship as a vehicle for connection and communion, a lesson he intended to expand beyond the confines of his community, that he also reflected on the criticisms he had absorbed about the temple practices. The Essenes often spoke of the corruption that pervaded the sacred spaces, where ritual had become an obligation stripped of its spiritual essence. They lamented the burdens placed upon the common people by rigid interpretations of the law, and within these discussions, Jesus found an urge to awaken a new understanding of what it means to be faithful. He envisioned a movement rooted in love and open dialogue, one that would inspire rather than exasperate. As the dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he felt it was time to ready himself for the journey ahead. He gathered his belongings, a simple robe and sandals, a satchel of provisions, enough for the few days' journey that lay between him and the sacred sites that beckoned him. He reflected upon those who had shaped his soul and prepared his spirit for this calling, feeling deep gratitude for the discipleship of the Essenes. Their dedication to truth resonated in his heart, and he silently vowed to embody the integrity of their teachings in every step he took. As he approached the others, he felt the weight of his decision settle heavily upon his shoulders. There was a bounding mixture of uncertainty and excitement coursing through him. He would soon part ways with the only home and family he had known for years. The brothers gathered for their morning prayers, their voices rising in harmonious supplication, invoking blessings for each other and the world. He joined them in those familiar rhythms, but this time he infused his prayers with a new petition, one that sought strength and transformation and the courage to embrace the unfolding of his destiny. After the prayers had concluded, Jesus stood solemnly before the community, their faces turned expectantly toward him. He took a deep breath, the air imbued with the scent of the earth and the lingering fragrance of herbs they often gathered. "My brothers," he began, his voice firm yet gentle, "the time has come for me to leave you. I am grateful for the laughter, the lessons, and the love we have shared. You have shaped me profoundly, but the Spirit calls me forth to a new mission, one that thrives beyond the boundaries of our sanctuary." The murmurs of the group rose and fell like waves, a blend of concern and understanding reflecting in their eyes. Each face revealed the struggle of acceptance. They had invested so much in his growth, had nurtured his spiritual awakening, and now he would venture into a world they had so diligently set aside. One of the elders, a man with a weathered face and wise gray eyes, stepped forward, resting a hand on Jesus' shoulder. "Go, young one, and may your path lead to the fulfillment of the promise we all await. Remember us as you walk among the people. We are with you in spirit." With his heart swelling with emotion, Jesus nodded, the unshed tears glimmering in his eyes. His departure would not sever ties of love. Instead, it would extend their reach beyond the secluded hills of their life together, scattering seeds of hope and compassion into every heart willing to listen. And so, with firm resolve, Jesus set forth from the sheltered world of the Essenes into the vastness of the territories beyond. Each footfall was a testament not only to his individual mission, but to the collective spirit of all who had sought truth and connection. He would carry with him the sages' voices, the sacred texts, and above all, the essence of love, a force that would ripple through the ages and touch the lives of countless souls yearning for light. As the sun rose higher, illuminating his path, Jesus caught sight of the winding road that led to the bustling towns and the diverse lives waiting to intersect with his own. The uncertainty of each step before him was imbued with sacred purpose, for he now understood. Within every heart lay the kingdom, waiting to be discovered, nurtured, and shared. As Jesus withdrew from the cave, feeling the weight of his revelations pressing on his soul, he reflected on the previous weeks spent among the Essenes. The community, with their austere lives and fervent devotion, had shaped him in ways he was just beginning to understand. Each moment spent within the walls of their sanctuary had woven strands of discipline into the very fabric of his being. The Essenes taught him not just about spiritual practices, but about the nature of humility and service. Their communal meals, where all food was shared and leftovers carefully stored, became metaphors for the giving nature he would soon embody. In their rituals of purification, he discovered not just the literal washing of hands, but a deeper cleansing of the spirit. It wasn't just an outward expression. It marked the beginning of an inner transformation. As he walked through the dusty paths that led to the river, memories flooded his mind. The quiet nights spent in prayer, the soft glow of oil lamps illuminating sacred texts, and the sound of chanting echoing through the chambers had all laid a foundation upon which he would build his teachings. He could hear the voice of one elder still resonating in his ears. "To know yourself is to know God." This profound insight vibrated deep within him, urging him to peel back the layers of expectation, both from the world and himself. The essence of those days crystallized around several core principles: compassion, justice, and a profound connection to the divine. The Essenes' fervent discussions about the coming of the kingdom of heaven became his own. He began to see flashes of the potential for a new reality, a vision not of political power, but of spiritual awakening. They taught him that the true transformation must first happen within individuals before it can ripple out into the broader world. It wasn't simply theological study that ended with a few thoughts to ponder. Rather, it was an invitation to carry this way of life into every breath, to embody the teachings in everyday interactions. He felt it stir in his heart, the call to love beyond boundaries, to serve without hesitation. Those late-night discussions turned into seeds of inspiration that would grow into the parables he would tell, each filled with layers of meaning that originated from his time among the Essenes. Reaching the banks of the river, Jesus paused to take in the cascading waters. The currents flowing before him mirrored the eternal flow of life and the passage of time. He recalled the moment he had emerged from the waters of baptism, surely an act of public proclamation to the world, but deeply influenced by the Essene understanding of cleansing and rebirth. It all echoed back to those days of preparation, when he learned about embracing the trials of the human experience, the highs and lows of life that could deepen one's connection to the divine. But perhaps the most significant cornerstone of his training was community. The Essenes lived in tight-knit groups, and in their bonds, he experienced the power of collective spiritual growth. They shared burdens, celebrated joys, and built a sense of belonging that transcended individual struggles. This communal aspect would become a pillar of his ministry, reminding him that no one walked alone in their spiritual journey. It fueled his calling to gather disciples, emphasizing that they were not to be mere followers but partners in the sacred mission to awaken the hearts of many. Looking down at the river, he felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He needed to bring this understanding of community into his message. God was not an abstract concept to be worshipped alone. He was a living presence in the relationships between people. The stories he would tell were not just for the intellectual stimulation of the learned. They were meant to bind humanity together in an unbreakable tapestry of love and compassion. With a new resolve, Jesus turned away from the river, a smile breaking upon his lips. The path ahead was laden with challenges, for he would soon enter a world steeped in division and need. But he understood now that he would not be alone. The echoes of the Essenes would accompany him in spirit. The teachings of their love would kindle a fire within him that could not be extinguished. In the quietude of his heart, he reflected on the importance of spiritual training, of finding a community that nurtures the soul. The essence of what they had instilled in him resided not just in the teachings, but in the relationships forged in trust and shared faith. Spiritual preparation is never solitary. It is in communion, in shared practice, in the vulnerability of opening one's heart to another, that true enlightenment flourishes. As he stepped back onto the familiar path, he realized the profound legacy of the Essenes would not just remain part of his history. It would be woven into the very fabric of his ministry. And with each parable, each healing, and each act of kindness, he would carry forward the message of their teachings. The importance of community and the necessity of preparation, both spiritual and communal, for anyone on their journey toward divine connection. The words lingered in the air. To know yourself is to know God. This truth would echo through the ages, a guiding principle for all who would dare to seek, not just understanding, but experience in the embrace of community. Jesus felt equipped to challenge the world, not just with words, but with actions that flowed from a heart molded by the caring hands of the Essenes. As he moved forward into the chaos of the world, a quiet confidence accompanied him. He was ready to shine a light that would illuminate the shadows of despair, a light forged from discipline, love, and profound spiritual kinship.